Hey y'all, my name is Priscilla and welcome back to my channel, Bookie Charm. For today's video, I'm going to be giving you some Latinx book recommendations for the Latinxathon. Okay, so full disclosure, this reading year I don't think has been really the best for me. So I am surprised that I have a good amount of books to recommend for you today, but it was a little nerve-wracking coming up with a list for recommendations this year because it's just been a tough year, I think. A tough reading year in particular also, along with it just being a tough year. But I have a number of short works. I think that short prompt is going to be the real winner here. And while I'm talking about that, maybe I should remind you of the prompts because I think I'm just going to be recommending the books and letting you know which book works for which prompt as we go. So of course our prompts are to read something short, read something spooky, read something cozy, and read something seasonal. Again, all these prompts are open to interpretation. You can double up on prompts, triple up on prompts, whatever you want to do to make the readathon work for you works with us. Of course, the main goal here is to read books written by Latinx authors. So as long as you do that, you're already winning at the readathon. With all that disclaimer in mind, let's go ahead and jump into these recommendations. The first book I have to recommend is Prime Meridian by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And Prime Meridian is a short story, not a short story, it's a novella, a science fiction novella written by one of my favorite authors. For sci-fi lovers, this is a great introduction to Silvia Moreno Garcia if you don't know where to start because she has quite a backlog. And I think that this really captures, it's just such a simple, direct, perfect little story. And it's a great introduction to her work and her writing style. The story itself follows Amelia, who is a 20-something, down on her luck, sort of stuck in her mundane life in Mexico City, and whose dreams and hopes are really invested in this idea of escaping to a Mars colony. And I think that what Silvia Moreno does really best is capture this sense of melancholy and this sense of being trapped and wanting to get out. I really liked Amelia. She's really cynical, really realistic about her prospects and her life. And I think that her worldview is just very, I guess it just made sense to me with my worldview, aligned with my worldview. And I think that I really liked also the incorporation of film in this and how she uses science fiction films, space odyssey sorts of films, introduced within Amelia's musings and day-to-day life. So that's Prime Meridian. Highly recommend this. Next up, we have We Are Owed by Ariana Brown. This is a debut poetry collection written by a Black Mexican poet, Black queer Mexican poet, and I loved it. This was one of my most highly anticipated reads for this year, and it definitely didn't disappoint. At the core of this work is this interrogation of the relationship between Blackness and Mexicanness and the Mexican state. And I think Ariana Brown really taps into this feeling of loneliness and seeking community. In her life, she was often, many times, the only Black person within Mexican and Latinx spaces. Her father was Black and her mother is Mexican, mestizo Mexican, and her father died at a very young age. So she was often not only the only Black person within her community, but also within her household, which is a whole other level of loneliness. And this book in particular discusses that experience. It also discusses that relationship to nationalism, and I think grappling with what Mexican nationalism is and how she encountered anti-Blackness as she traveled abroad in Mexico City during her college youth, and how she really finds kinship and community in other Black Mexican folks. She has a number of poems in here actually dedicated to Yaspar Yanga, who was an enslaved African living in Mexico that actually created a community and thrived. So that's what this is all about. It's a really touching, emotional, obviously deeply personal story, collection of poems, and I really, really admire her work, and I think that you should read it. Next up, I have a short story, and I actually listened to this on LeVar Burton Reads, which is a podcast, And of course, it's already written by LeVar Burton, so you're already getting a really good story with that narration. But it's called Tia Abuela's Face, 10 Ways by Lisa M. Bradley. This was one of the recent reads, short stories that he selected, I think at the end of August. And this is a sci-fi story that follows an anthropologist who is mourning the death of her tia abuela. And it's really short, so I don't want to get into too many of the details, but it explores themes of family and death and a bit of horror creep factor. And this is like super, super high in the way that she decides to honor her tia abuela, which is very controversial. And I really thought it was just a superb short story. It was obviously read by LeVar Burton, so it's just a really engaging way to read short stories. And this short story was first published in the Speculative Fiction for Dreamers anthology. I haven't yet read that, but if this is any indication, that probably is a speculative fiction anthology that I want to read at some point. Next up, I have Pan's Labyrinth by Guillermo del Toro and Cornelia Funke. I don't know if I almost hit myself in the head with that. I don't know if I've recommended this in past years, but I think that it's well worth your read, even if you have seen the movie or if you're new to this cult classic. Pan's Labyrinth is this is an adaptation of the original film. And it's a creepy, dark, and grim fairy tale that follows a young girl in a 1940s Spain whose stepfather is the captain of a military. He's a very cruel man, and how she believes in magic and how magic is the thing that is the only hope in this very dark world. To me, this story it feels very nostalgic, being in this world with a young girl whose fierce belief in magic is the only thing that gets her through. I think this is a great introduction for new readers that are unfamiliar with the film or even fans of the film, because it does give a little bit of extra insight and information. There's great illustrations in this, and this has to be done. It's a really beautiful copy that I have here if you manage to get the hardcover, if you just want to look at something nice. But that is this story. I think that if you're into creepy fairy tales, if you're into morally gray characters, if you're into like that nostalgia that you get from that sort of fantasy, this could be a great addition. Next up, I'm going to recommend Gustavo the Shy Ghost, which is a picture book written by Flavia Ziedrago. I believe this is a debut picture book from a Mexican artist and storyteller. And this was one of my favorite books of last year. I don't think I ever told you that because I scrapped that video, my 2020 favorites, but this definitely would have made the list. And of course, this features a ghost, but it is a very heartwarming, lighthearted, spooky story. It follows Gustavo here on the cover as he is trying to find a way to make friends, although he's very shy, as the Day of the Dead approaches. And I think the moral of the story here is that you don't necessarily have to change yourself in order to make friends. I think that's a really wonderful message. I think that the artwork in here is particularly adorable. Like, this is what will warm any heart if you haven't already seen that. I think I featured this in a Latinx picture book recommendations video. So yeah, that's Gustavo the Shy Ghost, and I will definitely point you in that direction if you're looking for more picture books to read. I've done a number of Latinx picture book videos that I'll make sure to link in the cards for you above if you'd like to check out. And next up is another favorites from 2020 is Lobizona by Romina Garber. I have a feeling that one of my co-hosts have recommended this in the past, but I don't think I've ever told you how much I love this book. And I'm going to remind you that you should definitely pick up this YA fantasy, especially if you're looking for a new series, because I believe the sequel has just come out. This is the first in the Worlds of Nowhere series, and it follows Manu, who is a Argentine immigrant who is on like this mission to find out more about her history and her past, but also running away from ICE. And it's just that YA fantasy. For me, it was that book from 2020. Latinx werewolves. Like, that was something I didn't realize that I needed, and I really love that it incorporates so much of that Argentine folklore, and it has themes of family and immigration, along with machismo and questioning gender roles within Latinx cultures and spaces. And I really enjoyed this fantasy book, and I'm looking forward to Cazadora, which has, I think, just come out. So yeah, definitely get on this if you need the reminder. Here it is. And now I've got, I think, three more picture books to recommend. I've got Sonias Rainforest, which is written and illustrated by Juana Martinez Noel. She is a Peruvian artist, and I've really loved her works in the past. This is her newest this year, and it follows this little girl named Sonia, who is an indigenous girl living in the Peruvian Amazon. So Zonia is a Shaninka, and this is the largest indigenous group in the Peruvian Amazon area. And in her life, she talks to the animals in her homeland and around her surrounding home in the forest. And one day she gets a calling that she didn't expect from a troubled member of her home, and she feels compelled to answer the call. And the message in this story is of the dangers and threats to the Amazon of deforestation and of depopulation and displacement of both animals and people. So I think that this picture book, like many others, is a great introduction of some really serious topics to some young readers, and also has just really beautiful art that makes it captivating for adult audiences as well. I'm a big fan of this author's work, and she didn't disappoint with this either, so definitely recommend this if you're interested. There's also a number of resources and author note in the back about the Amazon forest and threats to it and ways you can help and learn about these Peruvian indigenous people. So yeah, that's Sonias Rainforest. Okay, so next up I have Octopus Too, written and illustrated by Eric Velasquez. Let's try not to get that glare. I'm trying to adjust that here. So this is a story that follows this young boy here named Ramsey and his grandmother as they embark on this adventure to make pulpo guisado, which is octopus stew, and its possible dangers. This little boy also really likes superheroes, so there's that element of wanting to save the day and fight off maybe some dangers. And this story, I think, focuses on not only African cultures and traditions of storytelling, because this is a bit of a story within a story, which you'll get if you pick up, but also of cultural foods and the ability to bring people together and families together. So I thought this was really great. It's got a great sense of curiosity and just funness to it that I think makes it great for a family read, to read to little kids. I can imagine it would be really fun. But that's Octopus Stew. And I have one more picture book. This is a very picture book heavy recommendations video, so I hope you don't mind. But I've got Stella's Stellar Hair, and this is written and illustrated by Yesenia Moises. This picture book, you can't tell from this cover, is absolutely adorable. I read her debut picture book last year, and I knew that I was gonna have to read this for this year, and I absolutely loved it. It follows this girl here who has really big hair and who has this big event coming up, but is having a bad hair day, and she doesn't know what to do. So her mother recommends that she get advice from her aunties, and in this cosmic travel journey she takes across the solar system on each of the planets to visit each of her aunts and get inspired to fix her hair in a specific style. And this is a love letter, I think, to the African and I believe Latin diasporas is what this says. The variety of hairstyles that come out of those diasporas. And it's a story about self-love, self-empowerment, and big hair. And if you can't tell, the colors here are absolutely gorgeous. It gives me big Lisa Frank energy. So if you're into that, you'll definitely love this book. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really fun book. So that's Stella's Stellar Hair. And last but certainly not least, I have Imaginary Borders, written by Chitesco Martinez. This is a very small book if you can't tell. It's very short, but this is part of Penguin's Pocket Change collections, which I've really enjoyed. This one is written by an indigenous Mexican artist, writer, activist who has been speaking out for climate change for years and years since he was a small boy. And I really liked how this book in particular, this sort of essay, long form essay, is all about how to incorporate his art, his music, and his activism all in one. And I think that it's a really promising sort of inventive way of reaching young people. I will be honest, it has been a while since I've read this, but I do remember liking the fact that he incorporated both statistical data along with historical, personal history, and of course his own art form and music in this. Yeah, so if you're looking for a short story, a short essay collection, maybe something nonfiction to read, definitely think this is a good place to start. So that's Imaginary Borders. Okay, so that is all the recommendations that I have for this video today. But hopefully that you found something worthwhile picking up. Hopefully you're excited about some of the books that I talked about, because I definitely am. If you pick up anything that you saw here, please let me know if you're interested and excited about Latinx-A-THON. Also leave that in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, so those are the recommendations I have for today. If you're looking for more, I'm pretty sure some of the past recommendations myself and my co-hosts have made in the past would definitely work for the prompts that we have this year. I'll make sure to leave links to those in the description and in the cards above. So check those out if you're looking for more. But yeah, that's all I have for today. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye.